Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, which is a tad late today because this morning it was raining trailers. We had the first look at Tomb Raider, a second trailer for Jumanji, and then surprise, surprise, Marvel Netflix rebounded in a major way and delivered the best trailer of the morning with The Punisher. Now, speaking of watching things with me over on the main Beyond the Trailer channel, don't forget this Sunday you can watch the entire Wonder Woman movie with me. But you have to provide your own copy. There will be no picture or sound in my live stream. You have your own digital or hard copy of the movie, and you press play when I press play. Again, that's going down this Sunday, September 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I hope you will join me. And thank you so much for the suggestion of the snack for the movie. I'm totally going to go with vanilla ice cream, Diana's favorite. All right, so let's get into today's stories. Some surprisingly big headlines. The first is that Akira is still alive and looking pretty darn good as a live-action movie. Now, I was bummed when Nolan ended up not taking the directing gig. Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, this has just occurred to me now. I don't know if he's still involved in a producing capacity, but there was some discussion that he might direct Akira. And I thought that was a really good choice because it's tricky to adapt these Japanese properties for, the Western movie making industry and for a global audience. You can't have an entirely Asian cast. That's just not reasonable. But you don't have to run in the other direction like Ghost in the Shell did, which ended up really not being that diverse at all. And as a result, not only failed at the box office, but I think in some ways became a turning point for the industry and this type of casting. So maybe Akira will benefit from that as well. But it's very hard. Changes will have to be made. And I felt that someone with Nolan's reputation and fan support would be supported in making those changes. It would be better understood than when you get these other directors like Rupert Sanders from Snow White and the Huntsman on Ghost in the Shell that nobody's willing to back. So when Nolan walked away, I was sad. But now, whoever at Warner Brothers thought of Taika Waititi is a frickin' genius. I mean, he is a very quirky yet talented filmmaker, as you can see from just the trailers of the upcoming Thor Ragnarok. Although, let's not jinx it. Maybe he ends up not being able to tell a full 3-act movie. We'll see. But so far, incredibly good. And I think he seems like a perfect match with the material. Not only from a creative standpoint, but I think I have to say, from what's going on in society right now. I think he gets it, Taika Waititi, a lot like Jordan Peele does, and I think that's one of the reasons his film was so well received. And interestingly enough, Jordan Peele was also rumored, well, actually, he straight out was in talks for Akira, but those ended up not going through. He didn't really want to do it. I think he knew that he wasn't ready, and I think Warner Brothers kind of knew he wasn't ready. He just hasn't done something this big yet. But now Taika Waititi obviously has with Thor Ragnarok. He's ready. And I think he's a great choice. I hope that he will indeed sign on. And I also have to say, I think the idea of adapting Akira is something that I think would really appeal to Taika Waititi. And he seems like a little bit of a hotshot in a good way. So I think that he would welcome the challenge of trying to make the first successful anime adaptation that doesn't offend everyone. Also, of course, it started out as a manga, but I think it's most well known to audiences as an anime, particularly in the West. Very good anime. So anyway, I would recommend, and I do think that Taika Waititi would have a very diverse cast. I think he would understand the necessity for that. But I hope that he would have an Asian lead. That's what I would recommend at this point, and just have a really strong supporting cast that's also very diverse. Just represent everybody. I think that would be the way to go. And after Ghost in the Shell's horrible failure, I think the studio would probably go along with it at this point. Get a new Asian talent, someone exciting that everyone can get behind, make it a discovery. Make it a story in and of itself. I think there's definite ways that you can do it. And also, I think Taika Waititi, to some degree, is a name. And, get Chris Hemsworth or somebody to go in a supporting role and, bring star power in that way. I really do recommend that you watch the original anime. It's quite breathtaking. It reminds you of how good adult-oriented animation can be, something that anyone who watched The Legend of Korra knows, but a lot of people, particularly in the West, aren't aware of that. But if you watch Akira, you will be. But I also have to warn you that last third, the tricky last third of a movie, the third act, it's going to need a lot of work if it's going to be palatable to the mainstream. I hope they don't mess it up like the end of Watchmen, where they just seem to change it for the sake of changing it. It still was kind of confusing. They're going to have to nail it down and make it a little bit more easy to digest and understand. But I think it can be done. And again, I think Taika Waititi would make sure it was done respectfully. So I think this is fabulous. I hope that the deal goes through. And I'm curious to what do you think? Now, for the second story of the day, a deal has gone through that's quite unexpected, and that's that Linda Hamilton is returning for the Terminator, which is still coming back. You know, I'll be back and back and back and back and back. Ridiculous. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, speaking of continually coming back, is coming back yet again. And he's come back so many times already, and it hasn't helped the films. I kind of was excited about the last one when John Connor became evil, and I thought Matt Smith made a fabulous Skynet. But the movie ended up just being really poor. Sarah Connor Chronicles remains my favorite non-James Cameron Terminator story, and that's going to come up again in just a minute. Wait for it! It's amazing. All right, so anyway, Arnold Schwarzenegger is coming back for this new Terminator as well. But I'm glad that I'm nervous about it, but I'm glad that Linda Hamilton is back. I'm a huge fan of her Sarah Connor. Everyone always talks about Sigourney Weaver's Ripley, but I think that Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor is just as important. Such an iconic character. Oh, T2 recently was re-released. Didn't do that well in theaters, but if you haven't seen T2, do yourself a favor and watch T2. It's really good. You know, fall TV hasn't really started in full swing yet, so these are some great things for you to watch. Akira and T2. So James Cameron made this announcement like last night at a private event, and he had something really good to say about it, which was nice to balance the really stupid things he said about Wonder Woman. But he said, you know, there are a lot of men, you know, actors in their 50s and 60s kicking butt right now on the big screen. Why not a woman? Why not Sarah Connor? And I was like, oh, that's a great comment, James. You're back in it. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back for Halloween, as many of you pointed out online, which is in trend, was just, you know, creating a trend with now Linda Hamilton. And I like that someone else pointed out that, oh, this is good for Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver's agent should be all over this to get her to go back for Alien. Neil Blomkamp wanted her back, but it fell through. Ridley Scott's like, it's my franchise. Get away from it. But now he's 0 for 2 at the box office. I liked Alien Covenant, but, you know, there's not a lot of audience faith there. So maybe Sigourney Weaver can try again. But then James Cameron tripped himself up again because he said, oh, but don't worry, we're going to have an 18-year-old female character in the movie. And I was like, what? Liam Neeson, Keanu Reeves, Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher, and Denzel Washington. He was just saving Chloe Grace Moretz. She wasn't really in the movie. None of them had younger sidekicks, male or female. So I think that it really sends a bad message and kind of undercuts the whole, you know, female power thing that's going on with Linda Hamilton coming back. If you're like, well, I'm so glad Linda Hamilton's coming back, but who are we kidding? There's no way she's going to be able to carry the movie. And it's like, I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton back with Tim Miller directing and James Cameron producing and doing the story, I don't see why you need anything else. You know, maybe you could find another John Connor. I would love it if Summer Glau somehow could come back. Now, speaking, I promised you a Sarah Connor Chronicles comeback, and they said that, and you know, with James Cameron and Tim Miller working on the story, they have a writer's room they've put together. For some reason, David Goyer's in it. I don't know. I think he's a good idea man, as I've said before. So as long as he just stays as an idea man, I feel a little bit better about it. But also, one of the other writers in the room is Josh Friedman, who worked on who actually spearheaded the Sarah Connor Chronicles. So I'm very happy about that. Great show. It had the guts to end on a cliffhanger, hoping that it could force Fox to bring it back, and then Fox didn't blink and didn't bring it back, and it was one of the most shocking ends to a series ever, because you were like, oh, it never ended, and it was an amazing cliffhanger, but it was such a good show. And Summer Glau, I think, is the best Terminator after Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Robert Patrick, the T-1000 was really good. I wonder they tried to top the T-1000 in every movie since T2, and no one's been able to, I think, effectively do it. I wonder what James Cameron and Tim Miller might be able to come up with. You know, I think it's really hard to have faith in a Terminator movie because of the such bad ones that we've watched. I think the last Terminator movie was actually one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It was like nobody had ever watched any kind of popular entertainment, and they had no idea about artificial intelligence. It was ridiculous. It was a really bad, bad movie. But I so am respectful of not only Tim Miller, but also James Cameron's success, even when I don't like his movies. You know, Avatar and Titanic. I mean, I like elements of both, and the last third of Titanic, talk about the last third of a movie, is amazing. But you have to admire the fact that they're just box office juggernauts. Outside of The Force Awakens, James Cameron by himself is the only one to get movies into $2 billion club. That's astounding. And he's really coming back in a big way. True Lies, as I tweeted, I think over the weekend, True Lies is coming back as a TV show, I think with Mick G on board as well. And Cameron will be involved in that as well. So that's very interesting. Although you can't watch True Lies, you'd have to buy it. It's not available to stream anywhere, which I find very odd. Now, speaking of going online, how's that for a segue? Fox and Twitter announced a major deal that I found quite surprising and potentially game-changing. Now, we're talking TV, we're talking social media. Is it outside of the Beyond the Trailer purview? I don't think so, because again, this is such a big potential breakthrough for entertainment and how entertainment is covered. So everybody these days wants to get into video. Apple has original, because, Netflix is leading the charge. So it's like everybody, someone made a Marvel Netflix comparison the other day. One of you made that, and I thought that was very good. So it's like everybody wants a cinematic universe. Now everybody wants to do video. They're like, Netflix did it, we can do it too. And, Amazon has had a lot of success, but it's not so easy. So Apple's getting into the game. Facebook. Now Twitter is going to have original video content. And Fox is going to be a big part of that. And so TV shows have already encouraged people to tweet about them while they're airing. And I think that's proven quite effective. It makes the show seem like it's a big deal. It has the lemming effect. You're like, well, if everyone else is watching it right now, maybe I should tune in. And I think that shows so far have done a good job of encouraging people to watch online by having talent often live tweet the show. So Fox is going to stream episodes of Ghosted, their new show Ghosted and The Mick on Twitter. But what really interests me is a new pre-show for Empire on Twitter that's going to air. And we all know that Black Twitter is a force to be reckoned with. It's amazing. So that's a really great matchup, I think, of an audience that's already emerged and a show that I think speaks directly to them and is unique. Black Twitter is unique, and I think that giving a pre-show on Twitter is unique. I think the whole situation's just really unique. And I'm curious to see if it succeeds. And if it does succeed, how will other companies take advantage of this? I think it's a great idea. I think it's intriguing. I think it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I have faith in it. I'm curious, do you see yourself watching an Empire pre-show on Twitter? I'm curious to see how they position it and how they let you know that it's available. Sometimes they have it at the top, like they're like, oh, this is live streaming right now. I've seen that. Like for E3, they had some live streaming on Twitter, you might recall. For presidential debates, they do that. But it's, it's not that easy to find. But I'm interested. I'm curious to see how this develops. All right. So those are the 3 stories of the day. And the viewer question comes from Nicholas Babadia. And Nicholas says, hello, Grace. I have a question. The end credit scene has become very popular these days in blockbusters. So what, in your opinion, is the positive and negative side of not having them at all, like Wonder Woman? And also, as I have discussed before, I think it was a horrible mistake for Batman v Superman not to have an end credit sequence. But anyway, Nicholas says, and when they don't anticipate a new movie in the franchise. Also, why do you think a franchise like Star Wars hasn't used them yet? Love your videos. I learn a lot with them. Watch them every day. And since I'm a follower, I appreciate this business a lot more. Greetings from Spain. Thank you so much. Oh, that's lovely. Hello in Spain, across the pond. Great question. My answer is going to seem a little short, but that's just because I feel so strongly about it. So I think it is crucial for a blockbuster, I think any major or any genre film, to have an end credit sequence at this point. I think it's just something nice to do to acknowledge your fans, and especially if you want to keep a franchise going, like, a standalone movie shouldn't have like Spotlight shouldn't have had an end credit sequence. But if you want something to be something that is a part of people's lives going forward, it should have an end credit scene. And the reason you do that is it's important to get the audience excited about the next movie and talking about the next movie. I feel very strongly that if you don't have an end credit sequence, it just stops the conversation cold. You really want to, give people a feeling of forward momentum. And if you don't have an end credit scene, you don't have that. So I feel it's vital, actually. Now, the reason that a lot of movies don't have it is because they don't want to feel like they're copying Marvel, or they feel it's cheap, they feel it's pandering. I think Nolan said he didn't do it, if I believe I'm correct here, because he felt, it's like, oh, that's too businessy. I'm an artist, I don't want to put a stinger on my movie. And it's like, well, are you a commercial artist? Because this is the way movies are made now. And I think there's nothing wrong with satisfying your audience. So, but anyway, that's why some people don't do it. And I think that Star Wars maybe doesn't do it because they're like, maybe they feel they're Star Wars, they're a little too old school to do that, and they don't want to copy, even though it's in-house, they don't want to copy another brand. Look, Marvel came up with the cinematic universe and everybody else is copying that. Someone eventually came up with the first romantic comedy, the first blockbuster, right? It's a good idea, and I don't think that you can copyright an end credit scene. I think you should be focused on topping each other, you know, make it a friendly competition to who can have the best end credit sequence. Marvel, they do a really good job. I really like the end credit sequence at the end, of Civil War that teased Wanda and Pietro, and I thought the end credit sequence at the end of Civil War was very good. Both of them, both with Black Panther and Spider-Man, I thought those were excellent, and it just really got people talking. The Russo brothers are very, very savvy. You know, they've said they build their movies to combat internet criticism. The airport battle was fantastic. It was a great idea. It was a talking point all on its own. I made a whole video about the airport battle. It was so great. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in building a very strong and formidable competitor. It's the way blockbusters are made. So I think Star Wars should have them. I think DC should have them. I think everyone should have them. I think they're really fabulous. And I think that if Spider-Man: Homecoming and Wonder Woman both suffered from not Spider-Man: Homecoming had end credit sequences, but they didn't continue the conversation. And I think both movies suffered as a result and didn't really have a good feeling of forward momentum in the conversation continuing. Luckily, there was a lot to talk about for both of them at the box office. All right, so anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for your question, Nicholas. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Nicholas's viewer question, and don't forget to mark your calendar for this Sunday to watch Wonder Woman with me live on the main Beyond the Trailer channel. All right, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.